My name is Mara Ellison. On weekday nights, I smell like solvent and road dust, the kind of scent that sinks into denim and stays. The shop's clock punches out, and the quiet hits like a bruise. But that's when my second shift begins. Budget spreadsheets, overdue notices, and the mental arithmetic of which bill can survive being ignored one more week. Lauren would call around then, breathless from laughter, asking if I could cover her utilities just this once, and somehow just this once became a semester, then a year, then a lifestyle with my name under it. When Lauren got into her dream college, our parents acted like the sky parted for a chosen child. Mom beamed. Dad bragged to the mailman. I stood in the corner and did math. We all knew they couldn't afford tuition. They made sure I knew it too, with soft focus hints at Sunday dinners. College is so expensive these days, Mom would say, gazing at me like I was a relief fund with a pulse. I was saving for a down payment, working extra hours at the shop, but Lauren is my little sister. What's the harm in helping? At first it was textbooks, then groceries, then rent, then de-stress nights out that felt more like a subscription. Each request arrived with a script. I'll pay you back when I graduate, or Mom and Dad can't help right now. Meanwhile, my parents quoted the family gospel. Family takes care of family, Dad would intone, as if I wasn't already breaking my back to keep the lights on, hers and mine. Lauren's orbit grew glossier as mine shrank. She posted filtered dinners and weekend getaways, designer handbags with captions about treating yourself, while I skipped a meal and learned how to make coffee taste like Resolve. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she picked up a campus job. Maybe she was borrowing. Maybe I was being petty. When I asked, she shrugged. Everyone at school dresses like this. I can't look like I don't fit in. What I couldn't fit into was my bank account. Daniel, my boyfriend, kept his voice gentle when I spiraled. He'd bring tacos after late shifts, place a hand on my shoulder, say things like, "You're carrying 3 people's lives on one paycheck, Mara. That's not noble. That's erasure." He never told me what to do. He just drew maps out of the fog. I loved him for that. I did not love that his ex, Ivy, had started posting vague subtweets about women who hoard money and call it boundaries, which Lauren conveniently liked. I filed that under later. There were bigger fires. The first true alarm was the study abroad call. Lauren's voice came candy-coated. It's a once-in-a-lifetime program, a little more expensive, but totally worth it. I stared at the oil stain on my boot and said, I can't even keep up with your regular expenses. She breezed right past it. You always figure it out. I went to our parents hoping for gravity. Mom clasped her hands. What an opportunity. You'll manage, sweetheart. You always do. The sentence landed like a sentence. While I worked Saturdays, Lauren perfected the art of the petty complaint. Her roommate borrowed shoes. The cafeteria lattes weren't real. Professors were unfair for expecting deadlines. She made small jabs at me too. You're married to your job, she'd laugh. I could never. A coworker at the shop watched me rub my eyes during break. She doesn't appreciate you, he said. You bend until they forget your spine exists. I told myself things would get better. I also told myself that if I kept telling myself that, I'd wake up 40 and empty. Family dinner was labeled casual. That should have been my warning. I arrived to Mom fussing over Lauren's hair and Dad asking about her classes. No one asked how many hours I'd worked that week. I told myself to last 3 hours, smile, and go home. Midway through, Lauren pivoted to the study abroad plan again, her voice bright like a commercial. Everyone I know is going. The program's a bit more, but that's what makes it amazing. Then she turned to me with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Hope you're ready for a little extra work, big sister. These programs aren't cheap. Something in me went very still. Maybe you should get a part-time job, I said lightly. She laughed, loud and cruel. Me? A part-time job? I'm too busy with school. The room tilted. My fork went down. You think I'm going to keep funding your lifestyle while you refuse to lift a finger? My voice didn't shake. I work 2 jobs, Lauren. I skipped buying new boots last winter so you could post about truffle pasta. Mom bristled. That's inappropriate. She's your sister. Dad added, it's your duty to support her future. Duty, I repeated, the word tasting like a dare. When did it become my job to mortgage my future so she could rent one in Kashmir? Lauren rolled her eyes. Here we go. The martyr routine. Something inside me unlatched. I leaned forward. You called me last week to complain about lattes. You call me to fix everything. You never ask if I've eaten. You never ask if I'm okay. You think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere? My life isn't going anywhere because I've been busy funding yours." Her smile snapped. "You're just a loser with a wrench," she said, soft enough to wound deeply, loud enough for everyone to hear. The word landed like a slap. The table went silent. In the pause, I saw it all with nauseating clarity. The years of applause for her smallest efforts, the polite erasure of mine, the way I'd been conscripted into the role of scaffolding and told to be grateful I got to hold up the stage. I stood. "You want truth? Here it is. I'm done. No more rent. No more tuition. No more emergency Venmos so you can de-stress. I'm not your bank. I'm your sister. And you've forgotten what that means." Mom gasped. "Mara!" I looked at them both. "You taught her to be like this. You taught me to disappear. I'm done being the invisible one." Lauren's face went white. "You can't do this," she whispered. "How am I supposed to live?" "Figure it out," I said, picking up my jacket. I did. I expected Dad to roar. Instead, he stared into his wine like it might offer an alibi. Mom's mouth opened and closed around words that wouldn't save her from the part she'd played. I felt strangely calm, like the moment after a storm when the power is still off, but the air is breathable. I left without slamming the door. Outside, the night was cold and honest. The next morning, my phone convulsed. Lauren's text began with sarcasm. "Thanks for ruining dinner." Pivoted to guilt. "You're leaving me to drown." Then into rage. "You're cruel." I didn't reply. Mom called with disappointment polished into every syllable. "She needs you," she said. "She needed a job a year ago," I said. "She needed parents who told her no." Dad accused me of selfishness. I let him talk until the words emptied out, and then I hung up. Lauren tried a new angle. Her landlord called because she'd told him I paid her rent. "She's not my responsibility," I said. "Speak to your tenant." That evening, Lauren showed up at my apartment, mascara smudged, posture collapsing into the doorway. "You can't just cut me off," she said, voice quivering. "Yes," I said, leaning against the frame. "I can." "You don't understand. I'll lose my apartment. I can't move back home. There's no room." "For years," I said quietly, "I have been more than your sister. I have been your safety net, your bank, your excuse not to grow up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live like a guest in your own life. The one time I asked for respect, you called me a loser." I stepped forward, gentle but immovable. "I won't be your alibi anymore." She tried tears. "They used to work on me. They didn't now." "Family helps family," she said, reaching for the script. "Family doesn't take advantage and call it love," I said, and closed the door. Inside, my knees shook. Freedom doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like silence that scares you a little because it asks, what will you build now that you're not holding someone else up? On my counter, my phone buzzed again. A notification from Ivy's account, another vague post about women who weaponize boundaries. Lauren had liked it. I stared at the ceiling and exhaled. Let them have their chorus. I opened my spreadsheet. The numbers didn't change, but the math finally felt like mine. This was the end of the way things had been. It was also, unmistakably, the beginning of something I'd been told I didn't deserve. A life not shaped by someone else's appetite. The day after I closed the door on Lauren, the apartment felt like it had been scrubbed with cold air. Every sound was louder, the kettle's whistle, the neighbor's footsteps above, the soft tick of a wall clock that had gone unnoticed for years. My phone lay face down on the counter, buzzing like a trapped insect. I let it. Boundaries hum before they quiet. By noon, my voicemail was a patchwork of performances. Lauren started with scorn. "Congrats on abandoning your own sister." Then pity. "I can't sleep, Mara. Are you happy?" Then fury. "You'll regret this." She texted photos of empty cabinets and a dramatic shot of a single apple in her fridge. "I hope you enjoy watching me starve," she wrote, as if my refusal to finance her takeout was a felony. Mom called and started in that tone she reserves for funerals and broken plates. "What you did was cruel," she said. "Lauren is building a future." "So am I said. She paused, as if startled by the concept. "This intensity isn't like you." "You never noticed me when I was quiet," I said. "You're only noticing now because I stopped paying." Dad's call came later, all clipped logic and insult disguised as advice. "This is disproportionate. She's young." "She's 22, I said. "Old enough to open a bank account in her own name instead of mine." He missed the subtext. Maybe he didn't want to hear it. By evening, the group chat lit up like a siren. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months weighed in with platitudes dressed as wisdom. Family comes first. We all need help sometimes. An aunt wrote, "It's not fair to let her struggle." Another cousin added a prayer hands emoji, which is what people send when they want to look kind without doing anything. Daniel arrived just as the sunset bled out. He balanced a paper bag of soup and bread in one hand and gave me a look that didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. We ate on the couch, knees brushing, the TV off, the room warm with the smell of butter and thyme. "Still Teemu," he said lightly, and squeezed my foot with his socked toe. I laughed into my spoon and then sighed. "It's not the noise that gets me," I said. "It's the narrative. They're telling a story where I'm the villain because I stopped being a prop." "Let them," he said. "You're writing something else." I leaned my head against his shoulder. I hate that Ivy liked Lauren's post. He didn't pretend not to know what I meant. Ivy had posted a neat little sentence to her followers that afternoon. "Some women hoard money and call it boundaries. It's still selfishness when it starves others." Lauren had liked it. Half the comments were knife emojis dressed as compassion. "She's not the chorus you answer to," Daniel said. "But if you want, I'll ask her to knock it off." "You still talk?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Sometimes she sends articles about music festivals," he said with a grimace. "We're not friends, Mara. We dated. It ended. I've told her that. But I can be clearer." I wanted to say please do, and also I trust you, and also I'm afraid of being blindsided by people who smile while they unscrew the floorboards. What I said was, thank you. That night I slept like a person in a new house. Every creak felt like a test. I woke to 3 messages from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, this is Mr. Galvez, the building manager for Lauren's apartment. She listed you as the party who pays her rent." Listed me, not asked me. My stomach nodded. "I don't," I replied. "Please address your tenant directly." A minute later, a second text. "Understood. She said the delay was your fault." I stared at the screen until the words stopped blurring. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that lives in the gap between what's true and what people are willing to believe. I made coffee, took a deep breath, and logged into my credit monitoring site for the first time in months. A flag blinked red. New utility account opened 3 months ago. The address was Lauren's. The room tilted a fraction. She hadn't just leaned on me. She'd signed my name into a debt. I called the utility company. "That account was opened without my consent," I said. "I need to dispute it." The woman on the line had a voice like chamomile tea. "We'll send an affidavit. It takes time." Time. The currency no one refunds. I forwarded the alert to Lauren with a single line. "Take my name off everything." The message stayed unread while 3 new Instagram stories of hers bloomed. A crying selfie, a paragraph about betrayal, a link to a GoFundMe titled "Blindsided by Family, Help Me Keep My Home." The caption read like a fable, rewritten by a child. She'd been abandoned, cut off without warning, evicted by a cruel sister. She omitted designer handbags, de-stress nights, and that utility in my name. A few wide-eyed friends commented, "So sorry, Queen," with a handful of small-dollar donations. Mostly, it sat there, a theater with an empty audience. My Aunt Carla called. She always enjoyed a front-row seat to scandal if it came with the glow of righteousness. "I heard you're being unreasonable," she began. "Let me tell you a story," I said, and did. Textbooks turned to rent, turned to luxury, turned to entitlement. I told her about the study abroad assumption, the lattes, the loser with a wrench. I told her about the utility account. "Oh," she said when I finished, small as a pebble. "Oh." "Unreasonable is doing the same thing and expecting Lauren to become someone else," I said. "This is me choosing reason." "I'll adjust what I tell people," she murmured. "Or tell them nothing," I said, tired of being reduced to a cautionary tale in other people's mouths. The next day, my parents arrived at my door without calling. Mom's hair was still pinned from church. Dad held a folder like it contained a verdict. I let them in because some fights should have chairs beneath them. "She's been evicted," Mom said without preamble. "She's coming home." "She's lucky to have a home to go to," I said. Mom flinched. "We need you to help with the deposit for a new place, just for a few months." I looked at Dad. He avoided my eyes and slid a paper from the folder. A credit card statement, not theirs. The names at the top made my mouth go dry. Martin and Patricia Ellison. My parents, maxed out. The charges read like a shopping montage. Boutiques, a salon, a weekend at a lakeside resort. She used our card, Mom said, voice brittle. She said she'd pay. We can't make the minimum. You co-signed for her life, I said softly. Now the bill arrived. Don't be cruel, Dad snapped, finding heat at last. This is a family emergency. It's the result of 1,000 smaller ones you pretended weren't emergencies because they were quiet, I said. I'm not paying for this. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We did our best. You taught her that no was a word other people heard, I said. You taught me that yes was the price of love. Silence hung between us, heavy as wet wool. Finally, Mom whispered, What are we supposed to do? You call the bank. You set up a plan. You tell her the card is closed and the locks on the house are not a revolving door. And when she cries, you let her cry. Dad's jaw worked. He wanted to argue with the physics of consequence. He couldn't. He gathered the papers. They left with shoulders bent in a way I'd never seen. Two people who had finally discovered that what felt like love had been fuel. After they were gone, I sat with my back against the door and let the quiet flood me. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth. That evening, Daniel texted, Can I swing by? He arrived with tulips wrapped in brown paper and his laptop under his arm. He kissed my temple like it was a promise and opened a spreadsheet I hadn't asked for. Budget, he said and grinned, but one that's about you. We built it together. Rent, food, a small line item titled Future that made my throat ache. I can't remember the last time I planned something that didn't include someone else's crisis, I admitted. That's the point, he said. We can take small bites. You don't have to swallow your life whole. I traced the word future with my fingertip and let the possibility settle. His phone buzzed. He grimaced. Ivy. What now? Heard your girlfriend is starving her sister, he read aloud, rolling his eyes. I'm going to be plain with her, okay? He stepped into the hallway and called. I couldn't hear his words, just the cadence, patient, firm, final. When he came back, he looked relieved. It's done? I asked. It's clear, he said. No more comments, no more DMs, no more public sermons. Thank you. The relief felt like a window opening. 2 days later, Lauren's GoFundMe stalled out at a pathetic number. Screenshots trickled into my inbox from mutual acquaintances, a text thread where Lauren bragged that she'd guilt the old man at the shop into a loan, a voice note where she practiced a crying apology. The performance was collapsing under its own script. That night, Mom called again. Her voice was different, flatter, as if something inside had stopped spinning. We called the bank, she said. We set up a plan. And Lauren? I asked. She's angry, Mom said. She says we're monsters, but she got a job application from the cafe down the street. Good, I said. It wasn't joy. It was oxygen. After we hung up, I washed dishes under water that ran too hot and watched the steam as if it could scry the future. My credit dispute form sat drying on the rack like a paper ship. Tomorrow I'd mail it. Tomorrow I'd check my hours and maybe sign up for the community college class I keep bookmarking. Tomorrow wasn't a threat anymore. It was a place. I turned off the kitchen light. In the darkness, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt exactly the size of one person's life. My phone buzzed once on the counter, a final text from Lauren, for the day at least. You'll be sorry when I'm gone. I typed back, I hope you go somewhere you choose, for once. I didn't send it. Some truths are for me. I put the phone face down. The clock ticked. The wall held. The room breathed. I did too. The weeks that followed felt like living inside a storm's eye. Eerily calm, with wreckage circling just beyond reach. Lauren had moved back in with my parents, and though I no longer funded her, her shadow still stretched into my days. Gossip moved faster than truth, and she wielded it like a sword. On social media, she painted herself as the tragic heroine. Vague posts about betrayal, dramatic selfies, captioned with, "Some people only care about themselves." She kept the GoFundMe up, though donations trickled in slower than sap. Comments dwindled from concern to silence. People tire quickly of a play that never changes acts. But she wasn't just spinning stories online. She'd been whispering too. Word spread through our extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly texting me things like, "It's not fair to leave your sister in the cold," and "Family always comes first." One relative even left a voicemail, her voice dripping with judgment. "I never thought you'd be the selfish one, Mara." Selfish. The word stung more than I wanted to admit. Daniel noticed before I confessed it aloud. We were eating takeout on my couch when he said, You keep flinching at your phone like it's going to bite you. It is, I said quietly. Every ping is someone else telling me I've failed. You didn't fail, he said. You stopped participating in a lie. That's the opposite of failure. I wanted to believe him, but nights were long and echoes have sharp teeth. The true blow landed a week later. I came home from the shop to find a letter taped to my door, an overdue notice from a utility company I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I'd already disputed the account Lauren had opened in my name, but here was another. The dates matched her eviction window. She doubled down. I crumpled the notice in my fist and sat on the floor, rage hot enough to sting my eyes. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. It was theft, plain and deliberate. The next morning, I confronted my parents. She's using my name, I said, slapping the notice onto their kitchen table. Do you understand? This isn't about money anymore. This is fraud. Mom's hands fluttered as if she could smooth the paper into something less damning. She was desperate, she whispered. Desperate is asking. Desperate is apologizing. This is calculated. Dad cleared his throat. We'll pay it off. Just leave it with us. No, I said. My voice surprised even me. Firm. Final. You don't get to hide this. You're not cleaning up her mess. You're burying evidence of the mess. And then she'll do it again. To you, to me, to anyone who loves her enough to look the other way. Silence pressed against us, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Mom's eyes filled, but for once I didn't bend toward them. Actions have weight, I said. You've been cushioning her fall so long she doesn't believe in gravity. That's why she thinks she can do this to me. Because you always make it disappear. They didn't argue. Maybe they couldn't anymore. That night, Daniel came over with a stack of envelopes and a bottle of cheap red wine. Dispute forms, he said simply. We'll fill them out together. I stared at the pile. I feel like my whole identity is tangled in her hands. He pulled me close, then cut the rope. We worked until midnight, our hands smudged with ink and resolve. Each affidavit was a blade. 2 days later, Mom called in a panic. It's your father's credit card, she said, voice shaking. Maxed out. Thousands. Clothing, salons, even a weekend getaway. All Lauren. I closed my eyes. I should have been shocked. I wasn't. She promised she'd pay it back, Mom whispered. She promised 100 things, I said. You believe them all. This is the cost. Please, Mara, she begged. We can't make the minimum payment. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You defended her. You vilified me. You chose this bed. Now you can lie in it. For once, they didn't fight. Mom just sobbed softly into the receiver. Dad said nothing at all. Later, Daniel found me staring at the ceiling, the phone still clutched in my hand. You don't look relieved, he said. I'm not, I admitted. I wanted them to finally see. But seeing doesn't fix anything. It just makes the wreckage undeniable. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Sometimes that's the start. Not fixing. Facing. I turned toward him, exhaustion deep in my bones. And what if they never change? Then you already have, he said. It was the closest thing to peace I'd felt in weeks. Lauren's meltdown reached its peak in a way only she could orchestrate, loud enough to demand attention, messy enough to smear everyone around her. The GoFundMe sputtered out with less than $200. Screenshots circulated in group chats, her whining about ungrateful family, begging friends to share widely. But people weren't buying the story anymore. Donations stalled, comments dried up, and the sympathy she'd been banking on dissolved into thin air. Worse for her, word spread about the credit card stunt. My parents tried to keep it quiet, but nothing in our family stays hidden. Cousins whispered, and Uncle called me outright. She really maxed out your folks' card? He asked, disbelief dripping from his voice. I didn't even have to answer. Silence was confirmation enough. Lauren retaliated the only way she knew how, through drama. Vague social posts turned into direct jabs. Some sisters are snakes. Some people only care about money. I didn't respond. The silence was a barricade, and I intended to keep it up. But then came the night she showed up again. I'd just gotten home from a late shift at the shop. Daniel was on my couch, his laptop open, glasses sliding down his nose as he scrolled through something for work. The knock on the door startled both of us. When I opened it, there she was, makeup streaked, eyes swollen, her once prized designer handbag hanging by a loose strap. She looked less like a queen and more like someone who'd been dethroned without ceremony. You have to help me, she blurted, pushing past me into the apartment. No, I said, my voice flat. I don't. Daniel stood, ready to intervene, but I gave him a look. This was mine to handle. Lauren whirled on me, voice breaking. I can't stay at Mom and Dad's anymore. They're different now. They won't just give me everything. They actually said no, to me. Her disbelief was almost laughable, but the desperation in her eyes was real. They told me to get a job. Do you believe that? A job. I don't even know where to start. You start, I said, by realizing the world doesn't owe you for existing. She flinched like I'd struck her. You sound just like them, she whispered. For years, that would have been the deepest insult. Tonight, it was a compliment. Daniel cleared his throat gently. Lauren, it sounds like your parents are finally drawing boundaries. Mara's already drawn hers. Maybe it's time you— Stay out of this, she snapped at him. You don't know our family. But he didn't back down. I know what it looks like when someone confuses love with servitude. Mara's done being your crutch. Lauren's gaze snapped to me, sharp and pleading. You're really going to let him talk to me like that? I am, I said softly, because he's right. Her face crumpled. Tears spilled, but they didn't move me the way they once did. I saw them for what they were, another attempt at currency. You're both cruel, she spat, heartless. No, I corrected. We're finally honest. She left in a storm of sobs and slammed doors. The echo rattled the apartment, but the silence that followed was steadier than anything I'd felt in years. I sank onto the couch, my chest heavy but unburdened. Daniel sat beside me, his hand finding mine. You okay? He asked. I exhaled slowly. For the first time, yeah, I think I am. The fallout didn't stop there, of course. My parents called 2 days later, their voices subdued. She's furious with us, Mom admitted. She says we've betrayed her. You didn't betray her, I said. You finally told her the truth. Dad added quietly. She applied at the cafe down the street for a job. I closed my eyes, a strange cocktail of relief and sorrow washing over me. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't even growth yet. But it was the first step in a direction she'd never dared to face. That night, I pulled out the notebook I used to keep tucked away, the one with sketches of the house I once dreamed of buying. I traced the lines of a front porch, a small garden, windows that glowed warm in the dark. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that dream hadn't died. It had just been waiting for me to reclaim it. Months passed, and for once, life began to feel like mine. The constant buzzing of demands had quieted. My phone no longer lit up with Lauren's shopping lists disguised as emergencies. Instead, I woke to silence, or sometimes a good morning text from Daniel, which was a far better way to start a day. Lauren was still at my parents' house, though the stories that trickled back were telling. A cousin mentioned overhearing her complain about the food at home. She's mad. Mom and Dad don't cook her real meals, the cousin laughed, like she thinks they should hire someone just to take care of her now that you're gone. That used to sting, knowing she still expected to be catered to while I was clawing my way toward stability. Now, it just confirmed what I already knew. Entitlement doesn't vanish overnight. It clings until reality peels it away, piece by piece. Meanwhile, my parents changed, if only a little. They sounded tired when they called. Less defensive, more resigned. For the first time, they weren't asking me to rescue her. Instead, they asked how I was. It was clumsy at first. Are you managing? Mom asked one night, the words foreign in her mouth. Yes, I told her. I'm managing. And I was. With Lauren cut off, my finances slowly began to breathe again. I wasn't flush, but I wasn't drowning either. Daniel and I started talking seriously about the future, not in some fantasy way, but in small, deliberate steps. A savings plan. The possibility of night classes for me. Things I'd shelved for so long, I'd almost forgotten they were mine. Still, Lauren's chaos wasn't finished. One afternoon, Dad called in a panic. His voice was hoarse, almost broken. She's done it again, Mara. A credit card in our name this time. Maxed out. Thousands. The charges read like a parody. Boutiques, salons, even a weekend at a lakeside resort. I listened quietly, waiting. We can't make the payments, he admitted. We need help. I laughed bitterly. You defended her. You vilified me. And now you want me to clean up the mess you allowed her to create? Silence. Then softly, You're right, Mom said. This is our consequence, not yours. It was the first time she'd ever said words like that. They didn't make me gloat. They just made me sad for all the years we'd lost pretending reality wasn't knocking. Daniel found me later, sitting on the floor with my back against the door, tears hot in my eyes. They finally see it, I whispered, but it's too late to fix anything. He knelt beside me, his hand warm against mine. It's not too late for you. That's what matters. And he was right. Lauren's downfall spread beyond our family. Friends stopped answering her calls after her GoFundMe scam made the rounds. Without me footing the bill, her nights out, her shopping sprees, her image of being the carefree girl with endless resources, it all collapsed. Social currency evaporates when the wallet closes. The last I heard, she was still at my parents' house, angry and bitter, blaming everyone but herself. A part of me felt sorry for them. Stuck in the web they helped weave, but mostly I felt relieved, because I wasn't in it anymore. For the first time in years, I was free. One evening, as I closed up at the shop, Daniel leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching me wipe grease off my hands. "You know," he said, a smile tugging at his lips, "you've been so busy cutting everyone else loose, you haven't thought about what you want to hold on to." I raised an eyebrow. "And what's that supposed to mean?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded brochure. Night classes at the community college. Mechanics, business courses, even design. "Pick one," he said. "For you, just for you." I laughed, shaky, but real. "You're relentless." "Someone has to be," he said. I held the paper in my hands, feeling the weight of possibility. For so long, my life had been measured by what I could give up. Now, maybe, it could be measured by what I could claim. And as I locked the shop and walked into the cool night with Daniel's hand in mine, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was beginning.